My brothers and sisters, when we talk about the types of people we need to avoid, the first group I want to mention is what I call the energy drainers. These are people who, no matter the situation, always seem to suck the life out of a room. They carry with them an aura of negativity. They complain endlessly, they gossip constantly, and they seem to have the uncanny ability to take something good and immediately highlight the flaw, the problem, or the reason it will never work. Now I want you to reflect for a moment. You and I both know that life is already filled with its fair share of challenges. We all wake up with our own struggles, worries, and responsibilities. So ask yourself this: do I really need to carry someone else's endless negativity on top of my own? If you surround yourself with people who are perpetually pessimistic, it doesn't take long before their mindset becomes your mindset. You begin to see the world through their lens, where every opportunity looks like a trap, and every hope seems like a foolish dream. Psychologists tell us that emotions are contagious. If you spend time around someone who is constantly anxious or constantly bitter, it begins to affect your brain chemistry. Even your body reacts. You feel heavier, more tired, more burdened. And if you're not careful, their unhappiness becomes your unhappiness. That's the power of energy drainers. They don't just ruin their own mood, they sabotage the atmosphere of everyone who entertains them. But let's be fair, we're not talking about people who are going through a rough time. Everyone has moments of sadness or frustration, and being a good friend means supporting them through it. The difference is that an energy drainer doesn't go through a rough patch, they live in one. It's their chosen state, they thrive on it, and they often feel most comfortable pulling others down into it with them. Some of them disguise their negativity under the cover of being realistic. You've heard it before: I'm not negative, I'm just telling it like it is. But what they call realism is often just a habit of focusing only on the bad, ignoring the possibility of good. Others channel their energy into gossip, constantly dissecting the lives of others, never lifting the conversation to anything meaningful or beneficial. And the irony is, after spending time with them, you don't feel enlightened, you feel drained. Because deep down, you know the conversation added nothing to your growth. Philosophers have long warned about this. Socrates once suggested that we should ask 3 questions before we speak. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? The energy drainer fails all 3 tests. Their words are rarely kind, often unnecessary, and many times not even true. Yet if you allow them into your circle, you begin to tolerate their presence until you normalize their influence. So how do you deal with such people? The answer is not harshness. It's not arrogance. It's wisdom. Limit your exposure, guard your peace. You don't need to argue with them, you don't need to prove them wrong. You simply need to distance yourself enough to preserve your own energy. Remember, you have a limited reservoir of focus and strength each day. Why waste it battling someone else's self-imposed misery? If you value your journey, if you value your goals, you must learn to protect your atmosphere. Because your atmosphere shapes your attitude, and your attitude shapes your destiny. So I'll leave you with this thought: every time you allow an energy drainer into your space, you're effectively dimming your own light. Don't let someone else's darkness rob you of your brightness. Protect your energy, because your energy is your life. Another type of person you must be cautious of is what I call the dream crusher. These are the individuals who, intentionally or not, become the loudest voices of discouragement in your life. The moment you share an idea, a goal, or even just a hope for your future, they are the first to respond with doubt, mockery, or outright dismissal. You say, I want to start a business, and they say, most businesses fail, don't waste your time. You say, I want to pursue further education. And they reply, people with degrees still struggle, what's the point? At first, their words may sound like concern, or maybe even wisdom. But if you listen closely, you'll notice a pattern. They never offer solutions, only obstacles. They never inspire you to think bigger, only smaller. They never challenge you to rise higher, only to stay exactly where you are. That is the mark of a dream crusher. Now, why do such people behave this way? Some of it comes from fear. They are afraid of the unknown, so they try to make you afraid as well. Some of it comes from jealousy. Your desire to grow reminds them of how little they've done with their own potential. And some of it simply comes from a lack of vision. They cannot imagine greatness for themselves, so they cannot imagine it for you either. Whatever the reason, the effect is the same. If you allow them to plant their seeds of doubt in your mind, those seeds will grow and choke your confidence. There's a psychological principle worth reflecting on here. Human beings are deeply influenced by the voices around them, especially in moments of uncertainty. When you're at the early stages of pursuing a dream, your confidence is fragile. That's when the dream crusher's words land the heaviest. They echo in your mind and slowly convince you that maybe you're not capable, maybe you're not worthy, maybe it's safer to just stop trying, and before long you abandon the very thing that could have changed your life. History is full of examples of people who faced dream crushers, innovators, leaders, thinkers. Many of them were told it will never work. Imagine if they had listened. Imagine if they had allowed the negativity to become their reality. The progress of humanity itself would have stalled, and the same principle applies to your own life. If you allow someone else's doubt to silence your determination, you lose not only an opportunity, but also a piece of your own potential. But I want to make something clear. Rejecting the dream crusher doesn't mean you reject wise counsel. There is a difference between someone who offers constructive criticism and someone who destroys with cynicism. Constructive criticism is rooted in love, in wanting you to succeed, in pointing out the cracks so that you can build stronger. A dream crusher, however, is rooted in insecurity, in fear, in wanting you to stop so they feel less uncomfortable. You must learn to discern between the two. So how do you protect yourself? First, guard your dreams in their early stages. Not every idea needs to be shared with everyone. Sometimes it is safer to nurture your vision quietly until it is strong enough to withstand outside pressure. Second, choose carefully the people whose opinions you allow to shape you. If someone has no track record of pursuing their own growth, why should their voice carry weight over your growth? Third, remind yourself constantly. The size of your dream will often determine the size of the resistance you face. Resistance is not always a sign you're wrong. It is often a sign you're aiming high. So here's the reflection I want to leave with you. Every time you silence your dream because someone else told you it was impossible, you are not just disappointing yourself. You are also denying the world the gift of what you could have achieved. Don't let the dream crushers dictate your destiny. Protect your vision, nurture it, and prove through your actions that their doubts had no power over you. The third type of person you must distance yourself from is the manipulator. Unlike the energy drainer or the dream crusher, the manipulator doesn't always come with visible negativity. In fact, they may appear supportive, charming, even generous at first, but behind that appearance lies a hidden agenda. They are not with you for who you are. They are with you for what they can take from you. Manipulators operate in subtle ways. They may guilt you into doing things you don't want to do. They may twist your words, making you feel responsible for problems that are not yours to carry. They may use kindness as a currency, giving you something today so they can demand something bigger tomorrow. And by the time you realize what's happening, you often feel trapped, because saying no suddenly feels like betrayal, when in reality it is simply self-preservation. Psychologists call this covert control. It's not loud or obvious, it's quiet, it's disguised, and it often leaves you questioning yourself rather than questioning them. You walk away from a conversation with a manipulator feeling guilty, even though you haven't done anything wrong. That's their power. They know how to turn your strengths, your kindness, your loyalty, your willingness to give, into weaknesses they can exploit. Now, let's think a little deeper. Why do manipulators succeed in controlling people? It's because most of us have a natural desire to be liked, to be accepted, to keep peace in our relationships. A manipulator studies this desire and uses it against us. They know you don't want to upset anyone. They know you don't want to appear selfish. So they create situations where your only options seem to be either giving in to their demands or being labeled as cold, ungrateful, or uncaring. That's how they trap you, by convincing you that protecting yourself is somehow wrong. But here's the truth. You are not selfish for setting boundaries. You are not unkind for saying no. You are not ungrateful for recognizing when someone's behavior is toxic. Manipulators thrive in environments where boundaries don't exist. The moment you draw a clear line, their power begins to fade. Philosophically, we can say that manipulators represent a distortion of relationships. True relationships are built on balance, give and take, mutual respect, honest communication. Manipulation, on the other hand, is built on imbalance. One person takes, the other gives. One person controls, the other submits. And over time, that imbalance erodes trust, dignity, and even self-respect. That's why it is so dangerous to keep manipulators close for too long. Now, I'm not saying you must be harsh or confrontational. Wisdom doesn't always mean cutting people off dramatically. Sometimes it simply means learning to recognize the patterns, refusing to play the game, and walking away with peace. Other times it means reducing your availability, limiting your conversations, or politely declining requests without guilt. The goal is not to punish the manipulator. The goal is to protect yourself. And let me also add this: not everyone who asks for your help is a manipulator. We should not become cynical or suspicious of everyone. The difference lies in consistency. A genuine person will respect your no. A manipulator will punish you for it. A genuine person values the relationship more than what they can get from you. A manipulator values only what they gain. Once you learn this distinction, you'll begin to see clearly who deserves your energy and who doesn't. So here is the reflection I want to leave you with. Every time you allow manipulation to continue unchecked, you teach people that your life is open for misuse. But every time you set a boundary, you teach them that your life has value. Don't be afraid to draw that line. Protect your dignity, because once it's gone, it is very hard to reclaim. The fourth type of person you must be careful of is what I call the chronic victim. These are individuals who, no matter what happens in life, always find a way to place themselves at the center of misfortune. If things go wrong, it is always someone else's fault. If life is difficult, it is always because the world is unfair. If they don't succeed, it is because others didn't support them, or society conspired against them. Their entire identity becomes tied to being wronged, overlooked, or mistreated. Now, let me be clear. Life does sometimes deal us blows that are painful, unjust, or deeply unfair. Every one of us at some point will experience betrayal, disappointment, or loss. In those moments, it is natural to feel like a victim. But the difference is this: for most people, that feeling is temporary. They grieve, they process, they learn, and they move forward. A chronic victim, however, refuses to move forward. They hold on to that identity because it becomes convenient. By always being the victim, they never have to take responsibility, they never have to grow, they never have to confront their own part in the story. Psychologists call this the victim mentality. It's a mindset where the person constantly interprets life through the lens of blame. And the danger of being around such people is that they slowly invite you into their narrative. You begin to sympathize at first. After all, who doesn't want to show compassion? But then you notice that no matter how much advice you give, how much help you offer, nothing changes. In fact, your encouragement often falls flat because it does not serve their need to remain helpless. They are more invested in keeping their excuses than in finding solutions. This is where the chronic victim becomes draining to those around them. Their conversations are repetitive, their outlook is heavy, their stories never end with, "and here's what I'm going to do about it." Instead, they end with, "and that's why I can't." And if you spend too much time with them, you begin to absorb that same hopelessness. You start to see obstacles instead of possibilities, unfairness instead of opportunity. Philosophically, the chronic victim lives in a prison of their own making. They have chained themselves to the past, refusing to accept that while they may not control what happened to them, they do control how they respond to it. And the tragedy is that they often don't even realize the prison door is open. They could walk out anytime, but walking out means taking responsibility. Walking out means admitting that while life may have been unfair, they still have power over their choices, and that is a burden they don't want to carry. So how do you protect yourself from this type of person? It begins by recognizing the difference between genuine struggle and chronic victimhood. Someone going through hardship will value your support and eventually use it as fuel to stand up again. A chronic victim will reject your support because it threatens their identity. Once you see that, you can adjust your approach. You can offer compassion without enabling. You can listen without being consumed. And most importantly, you can limit the time you spend with people who refuse to take even a single step toward change. The lesson here is not to become cold-hearted. It's not to refuse to help those who are hurting. No, the lesson is to understand that you cannot save someone who does not want to be saved. You cannot carry someone who insists on lying down. Your duty is to preserve your own strength so that you can continue to grow, and perhaps even inspire them from a distance by your example. So here's the thought I'll leave you with. If you surround yourself with people who live as chronic victims, you too will inherit their chains. But if you choose instead to surround yourself with those who take responsibility, you will inherit their courage. Choose wisely, because their mindset will inevitably shape yours. Up to this point, we've spoken about the energy, drainers, the dream, crushers, the manipulators, and the chronic victims. But someone might ask, why does all this matter? Why is it so important to identify and stay away from these types of people? The answer is simple, yet profound, because the people around you shape the quality of your life more than almost anything else. We often underestimate the power of influence. Human beings are social creatures. We don't live in isolation, and our minds are constantly being shaped by conversations, by atmospheres, by the values of those closest to us. In psychology, this is called social conditioning. You may think you are immune to it, that you are too strong to be affected. But slowly, without even realizing it, you begin to mirror the attitudes, the habits, and even the language of those you spend the most time with. This is why the great philosophers and spiritual teachers throughout history have always emphasized the importance of choosing your companions wisely. Think of it like this: your environment is like the soil in which your life grows. If the soil is rich and nourishing, you flourish. If the soil is toxic and filled with weeds, even the strongest seed will struggle. And these 4 types of people we've been discussing, if they dominate your circle, they are like weeds that strangle your growth. They sap your time, they steal your peace, and they suffocate your potential. That's why it matters. Another way to look at it is through the lens of energy. Every day you wake up with a limited amount of mental, emotional, and physical energy. You can spend it on things that build you, your goals, your growth, your family, your faith, or you can spend it battling the unnecessary storms created by the wrong people. If you're constantly drained by negativity, discouraged from dreaming, manipulated into compliance, or pulled into cycles of blame and excuses, what energy will you have left to create the life you are meant to live? This is not just about avoiding stress, it's about protecting your destiny. There is also a deeper philosophical truth here. Who you surround yourself with is a reflection of how much you value yourself. If you tolerate toxic company, it often means you have not fully recognized your own worth. It means you are allowing your standards to be lowered, your boundaries to be ignored, and your purpose to be delayed. But when you decide, I will not allow these influences to dominate my life, you are making a declaration, not just to others, but to yourself, that your peace, your future, and your calling are worth protecting. And let us not forget, influence works both ways. Just as negativity spreads, so does positivity. When you choose to surround yourself with people who uplift, who believe in growth, who carry integrity, and who take responsibility, you begin to rise with them. Their energy fuels you, their vision inspires you, their courage strengthens you. That is why this entire discussion matters, because the people you walk with determine how far you'll go and in which direction. So I want you to reflect carefully on your circle, who drains your energy and who restores it, who discourages your dreams and who nurtures them, who manipulates and who respects, who plays the victim and who takes ownership. Be honest with yourself, because the answers will tell you not only about them, but about where your life is heading. And here is the closing thought. Life is too short and too precious to be lived under the shadow of the wrong people. Protect your circle, because in protecting your circle, you're protecting your future. So now we come to the final point, the takeaway. After hearing about these 4 types of people you must stay away from, the natural question is, what do I do with this knowledge? Because it is not enough just to identify who drains your energy, who crushes your dreams, who manipulates you, or who lives forever in victimhood. The real wisdom lies in what you choose to do next. And let me say something important here. Staying away from these types of people does not mean you are arrogant, it does not mean you lack compassion, and it certainly does not mean you are cold-hearted. Too many of us confuse kindness with tolerance of toxicity. We think that if we set boundaries we are being cruel, but boundaries are not cruelty, they are clarity. They are a way of saying, I know the value of my time, I know the value of my peace, and I know the value of my future, and I will not allow it to be wasted. When you distance yourself from destructive influences, you are not only protecting yourself, you are also creating space for the right influences to enter. You cannot expect growth if your soil is crowded with weeds. You cannot expect clarity if your mind is clouded by constant noise. Sometimes the most powerful step forward is not adding something new to your life, but removing what is harmful. There is also a deeper spiritual dimension to this. If you are always surrounded by negativity, it is harder to hear your own inner voice, harder to reflect, harder to focus on what matters most. Your purpose gets lost in the noise of other people's doubts, drama, and demands. But when you create distance, when you filter your circle, suddenly you find stillness, and in stillness you rediscover clarity. You begin to hear not just your own voice, but the voice of wisdom, of conscience, of guidance. That is what allows you to align your actions with your true calling. Remember, every person in your life is either a ladder or a weight. A ladder helps you climb higher, a weight pulls you down. Some of us are struggling not because we lack ability, but because we are carrying too many weights disguised as friends, companions, or even advisors. You must learn the courage to put some of those weights down, because only then will you rise, and perhaps the hardest part is this. Sometimes the people you must distance yourself from are people you care deeply about. It might be a close friend, a colleague, even a relative. And you may feel guilty for stepping back, but understand this, stepping back does not mean hatred, it means wisdom. You can still wish them well, you can still pray for their growth, but you cannot allow their choices to derail your journey. Their life is their responsibility, and your life is yours. So here is the essence of the takeaway. Choose wisely who earns a seat in your life, because your circle is not just about friendship, it is about direction. If you walk with people of clarity, you will think with clarity. If you walk with people of vision, you will dream with vision. If you walk with people of courage, you will act with courage. But if you surround yourself with the 4 types we have discussed, do not be surprised if you begin to inherit their habits, their doubts, and their limitations. I will leave you with this reflection. Your life is like a ship sailing toward a destination. The people you allow on board will either help you row toward that destination, or they will drill holes beneath your feet. The choice is yours. Protect your ship, protect your journey, protect your peace. Because in doing so, you are not just preserving your life, you are honoring your purpose.